We are about to dive into a life story that really defies every single conventional expectation.
It
I mean,
does.
forget the well-trod paths of presidential politics. Today, we're looking at the central paradox of Barack Obama.
And that contrast is, well, it's just staggering. It's really the core of our deep dive today. How does a man, a kid, whose early life saw him registered in an Indonesian school as Barry Soetoro,
Right? And listed as Muslim.
listed as Muslim, who then spends years as a community organizer in Chicago, earning, what, a meager $13,000 a year?
I think the sources said he had this beat-up blue Honda Civic.
Exactly. So how does that guy rise to become the 44th U.S. president, and then, after all that, command a fortune of over $70 million?
That journey from 13,000 to 70 million is like a perfect shortcut to understanding modern American power, identity, and polarization. Our mission is to track that path, focusing on the cultural influences, the key political moments, and the very complicated legacy he left behind.
And we have to be clear about the context. He was the first African-American president, taking office at a moment of just catastrophic global financial collapse.
The worst since the Great Depression.
The worst. And the U.S. was stuck in two wars. So the pressure on him to stabilize everything while also carrying this immense weight of historical symbolism was just, I mean, it was immense.
So let's start at the beginning, because his origins are anything but typical. Born in Honolulu, 1961, his ancestry is like a geopolitical Venn diagram.
It really is. You have his father, Barack Hussein Obama Sr., a Luo economist from Kenya.
And the Luo detail is actually important, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It grounds his identity. The Luo are a major ethnic group in Kenya, often associated with, intellectual and political ambition. But his father's marriage to his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, a white anthropologist from Kansas, it was turbulent and very short. They divorced when he was only 2.
So his defining experience wasn't stability, it was what? Global mobility.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting. At age 5, he moves to Jakarta, Indonesia.
With his mother and his Indonesian stepfather, Lolo Soetoro. And this is where that Barry Soetoro school enrollment comes from.
Right. And where the records note his registration as a Muslim, which, align with the local religion, he spent 4 really formative years in that cross-cultural environment.
And his mother, Ann Dunham, she seems to be the one who really provided the intellectual and moral blueprint.
Absolutely. She wasn't just, a homemaker. She was a pioneering anthropologist focusing on microfinancing and women's welfare in Asia. That commitment to social justice, that became his intellectual inheritance.
It's just the ultimate irony, isn't it? The man who becomes this icon had so little time with his own namesake father.
Just 1 month. A single visit to Kenya in 1971. But that brief encounter, you can tell from his writings, it had a profound, lasting effect on his sense of who he was and the weight of that name.
Okay, so that complex identity then leads to this period of searching after college. He's at Occidental, then Columbia.
And he tries some early corporate jobs, but the sources say he found them hollow. They lacked the purpose his mother had modeled.
Which leads him to Chicago in 1985, to the South Side as a community organizer.
And we have to just pause on the reality of that. A $13,000 annual salary plus $2,000 for transport. This was not glamorous. It was grinding, grassroots work.
Organizing congregations in places like Altgeld Gardens to fix parks, address community needs.
And what Chicago gave him, he said, was a fundamental political education. He learned how to be practical. He realized sincerity wasn't enough. You had to understand power dynamics to actually create change.
So if he's learning the limits of local organizing, what sparks the shift? Why trade the trenches of Chicago for the ivory tower of Harvard?
Because he saw that to make structural change, he had to understand the mechanics of power at the highest level. And that decision led to the first real inflection point in his career.
Harvard Law School.
Harvard Law School in 1988. 2 years later, he's elected the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review. And that was the catalyst. It was instant national attention. It basically guaranteed him a platform, and critically, it got him his first book contract.
So that achievement put him on the national radar before he'd ever even passed a single piece of legislation.
It did. He graduates magna cum laude, returns to Chicago, and then meets and marries Michelle Robinson, another Harvard Law grad.
Okay, so from there, he spends about 7 years, from 97 to 2004, in the Illinois State Senate. He builds this reputation as being not a firebrand, but effective.
Very measured. focused on cross-party work for healthcare, for criminal justice reform. But the first moment that truly put him on the national stage was a speech in October 2002.
The dumb war speech.
Exactly. A relatively unknown state senator gets up and opposes the planned invasion of Iraq. That took some serious political risk.
It established him as a voice outside the establishment consensus, which proved vital. But the true lightning strike, the moment everything changed for him, was that 2004 Democratic National Convention keynote.
We all remember it as electrifying, but was it just the content or was it the timing? I mean, what was the mechanism at play there?
Yeah, it feels like it was both. A perfect synthesis. He wove his own improbable story, the audacity of hope, with this message of shared purpose that just cut right through the red-blue divide.
The country was just hungry for it, a unifying voice. He went from a regional politician to a national figure, I mean, literally overnight.
And then wins the Senate race later that year with a stunning 70% of the vote.
And the stage was set. Just 3 years later, he's announcing he's running for president.
So he arrives in Washington in January 2009, inheriting a complete nightmare. You have to look at the data to get it. An 8.9% economic contraction annualized.
And 818,000 jobs lost in January 2009 alone. Devastating.
So the initial response had to be triage.
Pure triage. That meant the massive, $831 billion stimulus package, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and the very controversial but ultimately successful auto industry bailout.
Which saved millions of manufacturing jobs.
It did. But domestically, his signature achievement was always going to be the Affordable Care Act, the ACA. This was the health care reform that had defeated Democratic presidents for decades.
Its passage was historic, but it came at a huge political cost, didn't it?
A massive cost. It was an almost entirely party-line vote. It cemented the polarization that would define his entire tenure, but the impact was profound.
I mean, in terms of the numbers.
Yeah, the uninsured rate dropped from 16% to under 11% by 2016. And crucially, it guaranteed coverage for people with pre-existing conditions.
Beyond healthcare, there was also the Dodd-Frank Act. What was the real significance of that financial reform?
Dodd-Frank was about restoring public trust as much as it was regulation. It created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it was a signal that the reckless behavior from 2008 wouldn't be tolerated again.
And on the security front, he fulfilled that key promise to withdraw combat forces from Iraq by 2011.
And then, of course, the pinnacle security victory. May 2011. Operation Neptune Spear.
The killing of Osama bin Laden. A huge strategic and morale boost for the country.
Absolutely. But now we have to get into the necessary nuance, the areas of criticism.
Right. And first up is a big broken promise. Guantanamo Bay.
A major campaign promise. He failed to close it. When he left office, there were still 41 prisoners there. It just became this unaddressed legacy issue.
Another major controversy was the expansion of drone warfare.
Yes, in Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia. The administration's official civilian casualty numbers were quite low, somewhere between 64 and 116. But independent reports, investigative journalism documented deaths between 380 and 801. That disparity drew really severe criticism.
And on the economic front, a persistent criticism from the left was the lack of accountability for 2008. No real criminal prosecutions for senior financial executives.
It was a huge issue. The problem was largely legal difficulty. Proving criminal intent, that executives willfully broke the law versus just being negligent, is exceptionally complex.
So the decision was to stabilize the economy first.
Right, but the lack of jail time for Wall Street figures just destroyed a lot of public faith in the justice system.
Then there was the huge foreign policy test, Syria. He drew a red line against chemical weapons.
And when Assad crossed it in 2013, he backed away from military intervention. He opted for a Russian brokered deal instead. And critics just hammered him for that, arguing it undercut American credibility.
And finally, we have to return to this identity, the shadow of the birther conspiracy.
It was fundamentally rooted in racial skepticism. It weaponized all those unique global roots we talked about, the Indonesian school, the African father, to create this narrative that he just wasn't legitimately American.
Even after he released the long-form birth certificate.
It didn't matter. It persisted. It reflected this deep societal anxiety about who gets to define American leadership.
Which brings us right back to that central paradox. We contrast the $13,000 organizer or even the $165,000 a year senator
with the current financial reality. And this isn't just about wealth. It's about the professionalization of the former first family into a global cultural brand.
Exactly. The financial numbers are really the third major inflection point. In 2017, the Obamas secure that joint book deal.
Reportedly worth $65 million, it's the largest presidential book deal in history. And the books themselves, A Promised Land and Michelle's Becoming, were just staggering commercial hits.
And it wasn't just books. In 2018, they founded Higher Ground Productions.
Right. Producing content for Netflix, for Spotify, it gives them this immense continued cultural influence long after leaving office.
You factor in the speaking fees. What, $400,000 or more per event?
Which is his entire annual presidential salary for a single speech.
And their net worth just surges. It's estimated at $70 million or higher by now. The former community organizer is a media and financial powerhouse.
But that wealth isn't solely personal. It's also fueling the Obama Foundation and the Presidential Center,
Which has raised over $1 billion since 2017.
supporting initiatives like the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, which is focused on young men of color.
So if we synthesize all of this, his historical evaluation is what? A significant but ultimately constrained president.
I think that's right. He restored American diplomatic standing, he achieved landmark reforms like the ACA and Dodd-Frank, but he was constantly challenged by intense polarization.
And his enduring significance is profound as a global symbol of possibility for African Americans and people of color. He proved the highest office was attainable, even if, structural inequities persisted.
So here's the analytical thought we want to leave with you. Obama himself has explicitly said that he believes his work with the Obama Foundation
Work built with the wealth he earned after his political career.
has the potential to be more consequential than his presidency.
So just think about that. If a leader who achieved the absolute peak of political power believes their most important legacy is built outside the White House, what does that revelation tell you about the inherent limitations, the suffocating polarization, and just the constraints of the modern American presidency?
It's definitely something to mull over.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the improbable journey of Barack Obama, please hit that like button and subscribe for more.